A single mom walked 20 miles to a job interview, her feet bleeding with every step, until the CEO saw her bloody shoes, broke down in tears before the entire office, and uncovered a truth so shocking it could change both of their lives forever. But what hidden betrayal will test her fight for dignity and hope? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The streetlights cast long shadows as Maria Lopez gently closed her front door, wincing at the tiny squeak of its hinges. The pre-dawn air felt cool against her face, a blessed relief before the heat that would surely come later. She smoothed her only interview-appropriate outfit, a simple navy dress she'd carefully ironed the night before. Mrs. Rodriguez, her elderly neighbor, waited on the porch next door. The old woman's kind eyes crinkled with concern as Maria approached. "You're really going to walk all that way, mija?" she whispered, accepting the folded note Maria handed her. "I have to try," Maria replied softly. "Lily's still sleeping. The note has my cell phone number, but—" She hesitated. "The battery's almost dead, so if you can't reach me, don't worry. I'll be back before dark." Mrs. Rodriguez squeezed her hand. "That sweet girl will be fine with me. Just take care of yourself." Maria's throat tightened as she thought of Lily, peaceful in her small bed, surrounded by her favorite stuffed animals. She'd kissed her daughter's forehead before leaving, breathing in the familiar scent of baby shampoo and clean sheets. "Thank you," Maria managed, clutching her folder of carefully prepared resumes to her chest. Inside were copies of her high school diploma, reference letters from previous employers, and certificates from online courses she'd completed between late-night shifts at various jobs. The streets were empty as Maria began walking, her worn shoes already feeling loose around the heels. She'd tried to repair them with superglue the night before, but the soles were still partially detached. Each step made a slight flapping sound against the sidewalk. As she left her neighborhood behind, Maria whispered a prayer. "Lord, give me strength today. Not for me, but for Lily. She deserves so much more than I've been able to give her." The sky gradually lightened from black to deep purple, then to softer shades of pink and orange. Maria kept a steady pace, trying to ignore the growing discomfort in her feet. She'd chosen her most comfortable shoes, but they were several years old and falling apart. The first blister formed before she'd gone 5 miles. Cars began appearing on the road, people heading to early shifts or morning meetings. Maria kept her head high, though she felt the curious stares of drivers passing by. A young woman walking alone, dressed for business but clearly out of place on this stretch of highway. She knew what they must think. The sun climbed higher, and sweat began to trickle down Maria's back. She'd brought a small bottle of water, but she sipped sparingly, knowing she had to make it last. Her feet were screaming now, each step sending sharp pains through her soles and ankles. A memory surfaced. Lily at her school art show last month, proudly displaying her drawing of their family. Just the two of them, holding hands, with a bright yellow sun overhead and a rainbow arching across the paper. "That's you and me, Mama," Lily had explained, pointing to the figures. "And look, we're smiling because we're happy." Maria blinked back tears, her pace quickening despite the pain. Lily deserved to smile like that every day, not just in crayon drawings. She deserved new clothes instead of carefully mended hand-me-downs, fresh school supplies instead of half-used pencils, and a mother who could attend school events without begging to switch shifts. Hour after hour passed as Maria walked. The morning traffic thinned out as she left the suburban areas behind. Her shoes had started to fall apart completely, the backing of her right heel now completely separated. Each step brought the rough edge scraping against her skin. She felt something warm and wet in her shoes, and knew without looking that her feet had started bleeding. The friction of worn-out shoes combined with miles of walking had torn her skin raw. Maria gritted her teeth and pressed on, focusing on controlling her breathing like she'd learned in a yoga video she'd watched on the library computer. Inhale for 4 steps, hold for 4 steps. Exhale for 4 steps. The rhythm helped distract her from the pain, from the growing heaviness in her legs, from the gnawing hunger in her stomach. She hadn't eaten breakfast, saving the last of their groceries for Lily. The city skyline appeared in the distance, gleaming towers reaching toward the cloudless blue sky. Maria's heart leaped at the sight, even as her body protested every movement. She was more than halfway there. A passing truck sprayed her with dust and grit, and Maria had to stop for a moment, coughing. She carefully wiped her face with her handkerchief, not wanting to smudge her carefully applied makeup. The small amount of foundation and mascara she owned had been saved for special occasions, and today needed to be special. The sun was directly overhead now, beating down mercilessly. Maria's dark hair absorbed the heat, making her head pound. She'd pulled it back in a neat bun, but wisps had escaped to stick to her sweaty neck. Her water bottle was almost empty. Each step became a conscious decision. Right foot forward, ignore the stabbing pain. Left foot forward, pretend the wetness isn't blood. Right foot again, think of Lily's smile. Left foot, remember why you're doing this. Maria clutched her folder tighter, feeling the papers inside crinkle slightly. These documents represented every scrap of qualification she possessed, every bit of progress she'd clawed out of their circumstances. Her hands were shaking now, from exhaustion or emotion or both. A car honked as it passed, and Maria jumped slightly, almost losing her balance. She steadied herself against a road sign, leaving a smeared handprint on the metal. Looking down, she saw red footprints marking her path on the sun-baked concrete. The city was closer now, but the tall buildings still seemed to mock her with their distance. Maria's vision blurred momentarily, and she blinked hard to clear it. She couldn't stop now. Stopping meant failing, and failing meant returning to Lily empty-handed, with nothing but another broken promise. Just a little further, she whispered to herself, her voice cracking from thirst. Just a little further for Lily. Her shoes squished with each step now, the blood mixing with sweat to create a horrifying cocktail. Maria forced herself not to look down, knowing the sight would only make it harder to continue. Instead, she fixed her gaze on the distant towers, imagining Lily's future in each gleaming window. In one of those buildings was an opportunity, a real one, not just another dead-end job or temporary position. In one of those buildings was the chance to give Lily the life she deserved. Maria just had to get there, one painful step at a time. The gleaming glass tower stretched toward the sky like a monument to success, its windows reflecting the late morning Sunday. Maria Lopez stood at its base, her chest heaving from exertion and her legs trembling with exhaustion. The 20-mile journey had taken a brutal toll. She paused at the building's entrance, trying to catch her breath and smooth her sweat-dampened hair. Her navy dress clung uncomfortably to her skin, and she could feel the raw spots on her feet burning with each step. Still, she lifted her chin and squared her shoulders. This was her chance, maybe her only chance, and she wouldn't let her appearance ruin it. The lobby's cool air hit her like a wave as she stepped through the revolving door. The space was immaculate, with polished marble floors that stretched out in every direction. A massive reception desk curved along one wall, topped with sleek computers and staffed by 3 professionally dressed women. Maria limped toward the desk, clutching her folder of credentials close to her chest. Each step sent sharp pains shooting through her feet, but she forced herself to walk as normally as possible. The closest receptionist, a young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair, looked up from her computer screen. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly as she took in Maria's disheveled appearance. Her gaze traveled from Maria's sweat-dampened hair to her worn shoes, and her lips pressed into a thin line. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone polite but distant. "Yes, please." Maria worked to keep her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "I have an interview scheduled for the administrative assistant position. Maria Lopez." The receptionist tapped at her keyboard, her manicured nails clicking against the keys. "You're 20 minutes early?" she said, not looking up. "Please have a seat in the waiting area. Someone will come to get you." Maria nodded her thanks and turned toward the cluster of modern leather chairs along the wall. Her feet screamed in protest with each step, and she could feel fresh warmth seeping into her socks. She bit her lip, fighting back tears of pain. Just then, the elevator doors opened with a soft chime. A tall man in an expertly tailored suit stepped out, his presence commanding immediate attention from everyone in the lobby. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who belonged there, who owned the very air around him. Maria recognized him instantly from the company website she'd studied, Daniel Whitmore, CEO of the entire corporation. Her heart skipped a beat as he walked past, his shoes clicking against the marble floor. But then he stopped abruptly, turning back to look at her. His eyes, sharp and observant, had caught something amiss. He glanced down, and Maria followed his gaze to her feet. To her horror, small spots of blood had begun to seep through her worn shoes, leaving tiny marks on the pristine floor where she stood. The lobby fell silent. The receptionist stopped typing. Other employees passing through slowed their steps, watching the scene unfold. Maria felt her face flush with embarrassment, but she couldn't move, couldn't run away from this moment that might destroy her chances before she even had her interview. To everyone's surprise, Daniel Whitmore walked back toward her. Without hesitation, he knelt down in front of her, his expensive suit pants touching the marble floor. The action was so unexpected, so contrary to what a powerful CEO should do, that Maria heard several people gasp. "Your feet," he said softly, looking up at her with concern etched across his features. "They're bleeding. What happened?" Maria swallowed hard, fighting back tears. This wasn't how she'd imagined meeting the CEO. But there was something in his eyes, not pity, but genuine care, that made her answer honestly. "I walked here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "From the east side of town, about 20 miles. I couldn't afford the bus fare, and she took a shaky breath. "I couldn't miss this opportunity." Daniel Whitmore's eyes widened, he blinked rapidly, and Maria was stunned to see tears welling up in them. He remained kneeling, seemingly unaware of the growing crowd of onlookers or the whispers that had begun to circulate through the lobby. 20 miles? He repeated, his voice thick with emotion. "In these shoes?" Maria nodded, clutching her folder tighter. "I have a daughter," she explained, not sure why she was telling him this but unable to stop. "Lily, she's everything to me. This job, it could change our lives. I had to try." A tear slipped down Daniel's cheek, catching the lobby's bright lights before he quickly wiped it away. The employees watching the scene stood frozen, their expressions a mix of shock and disbelief at seeing their normally composed CEO so visibly moved. "What's your name?" he asked, still kneeling before her. "Maria Lopez, sir." Daniel stood slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. He seemed to be seeing something beyond her disheveled appearance, beyond the sweat and exhaustion. The lobby remained absolutely silent, every person present holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. "Miss Lopez," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed space, "I believe you have an interview scheduled." He glanced at her bloody shoes, then back to her face. "But first, we need to take care of your feet." The enormous glass doors of the conference room swung open as Daniel Whitmore gently guided Maria inside. Her legs trembled, partly from exhaustion and partly from the surreal nature of the moment. The room was immaculate, all polished wood and pristine surfaces that made her increasingly aware of her disheveled appearance. "Please, sit down," Daniel said, pulling out a plush leather chair. "Let me get you some water first." Maria sank into the chair, relief flooding through her aching feet. She watched as the CEO himself, a man whose photo she'd seen in business magazines, hurried to a small refrigerator in the corner and returned with a cold bottle of water. "Thank you, Mr. Whitmore," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Daniel, please?" He sat across from her, his kind eyes filled with concern. "Before we start anything formal, let's take care of those feet. Sarah," he called out. His assistant appeared at the door, her expression a mixture of confusion and disapproval. "Yes, Mr. Whitmore? Please bring us the first aid kit, and have someone fetch a fresh pair of shoes from the boutique downstairs. Size?" He looked at Maria questioningly. "Oh no, please, I couldn't," Maria began. But Daniel held up a hand. "Size?" he repeated gently. "7," she whispered, fighting back tears at his kindness. After Sarah left, closing the door with perhaps more force than necessary, Daniel leaned forward. "Now, Maria, tell me your story. The real story, not the polished version you prepared for an interview." Maria's hands twisted in her lap as she gathered her courage. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, warming her back. "I'm a widow," she began, her voice growing stronger. "My husband passed away 3 years ago, leaving me to raise our daughter Lily alone. She's 7 now, the brightest, most beautiful little girl you could imagine." A small smile touched Daniel's face as she spoke about Lily. "She loves art," Maria continued, reaching for her worn folder. "She drew this just this morning." She pulled out a crayon drawing of 2 stick figures, one big, one small, holding hands under a rainbow. She said it was for good luck. Daniel took the drawing carefully, studying it with genuine interest. "She has talent," he said softly. "She's my whole world," Maria admitted. "After Roberto, my husband, died, we lost everything. I've worked whatever jobs I could find. Cleaning houses, night shifts at gas stations, anything to keep food on the table. But Lily deserves better than watching her mother scrape by. She deserves stability, a chance at a good education, a future." Sarah returned with the first aid kit and a shoebox, placing them on the table without a word. Daniel nodded his thanks, then turned back to Maria. "And that's why you walked 20 miles for this interview?" "I couldn't miss this opportunity," Maria said, straightening her shoulders despite her exhaustion. "When I saw the posting for an administrative assistant position, I knew it could change everything for us. I have experience with office work. I was studying to be a teacher before Roberto got sick. I'm good with people. I learn quickly, and she paused, choosing her words carefully. "I would work harder than anyone else here, Mr. Whitmore, not out of desperation, but because that's who I am." Daniel nodded thoughtfully, then opened the first aid kit. "Let me help you with those feet first. Then we'll talk about the position properly." "Sir," Sarah interrupted from the doorway, "the board meeting starts in 15 minutes. "Reschedule it," Daniel replied without looking up. "But sir, the quarterly projections—" "Sarah," he said firmly. "Reschedule it." The assistant's heels clicked sharply as she left. Daniel carefully helped Maria clean and bandage her feet, then handed her the new shoes, simple but elegant black flats that felt like walking on clouds after her torn ones. "Now," he said, returning to his seat, "tell me about your technical skills. What software are you familiar with?" For the next hour, they discussed Maria's qualifications. She was honest about her limitations, but emphasized her willingness to learn. Daniel asked thoughtful questions about her problem-solving abilities, her approach to difficult situations, and her ideas for improving office efficiency. "You know," he said during a pause, "you remind me of someone." His eyes grew distant. "My mother worked as a housekeeper when I was young. She walked miles to work too, saved every penny for my education. She never let circumstances defeat her spirit." Maria saw the emotion in his eyes and understood that this successful man had once been a child watching his own mother struggle. It created a bridge between them, an understanding that went beyond the usual interview dynamics. "Mr. Whitmore," Maria said carefully, "I know I'm not the typical candidate. My clothes aren't designer brands, my resume has gaps, and I walked here instead of driving a nice car. But I have something that can't be bought or taught: determination. Give me a chance, and I promise you won't regret it." Daniel stood up, straightening his suit jacket. "Thank you for your honesty, Maria. I need to review some things with the board, but I'll be in touch soon." He extended his hand, and she shook it firmly despite her trembling fingers. After he left, Maria remained seated, trying to process everything that had happened. Through the glass walls, she could see people hurrying past, their expressions curious and sometimes dismissive. 2 board members paused nearby, their voices carrying faintly through the glass. "Another of Daniel's charity cases," one muttered, shaking his head. "Did you see her clothes?" the other responded. "This isn't a homeless shelter, it's a Fortune 500 company." Maria kept her eyes forward, her back straight, even as their words stung. She thought of Lily's drawing, safely tucked back in her folder. She thought of the new shoes on her feet, not a handout, but a gesture of human kindness. Whatever these people thought of her, she had walked 20 miles to be here. She had told her story with dignity. She had done everything she could. Now, all she could do was pray that someone, perhaps that little boy, who had watched his mother walk miles to work, would see beyond appearances to recognize her worth. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the downtown sidewalk as Maria emerged from the gleaming tower. Her feet still throbbed with each step, but something else burned brighter within her chest: hope, fragile yet persistent. The interview with Daniel Whitmore kept replaying in her mind, his kind eyes and attentive presence so different from what she'd expected from a CEO. She made her way to the nearby bus stop, her legs heavy with exhaustion from the morning's long walk. The metal bench was hot from the sun, but she gratefully lowered herself onto it. Only then did the reality of her situation hit her. She had no money for the bus fare home. Maria opened her small purse, though she already knew what she'd find. A few crumpled tissues, Lily's favorite hair tie that she always kept as a good luck charm, and nothing else. Her stomach tightened as she thought about another 20-mile walk, this time with blistered feet and the afternoon heat beating down. "Excuse me, miss?" A gentle voice interrupted her thoughts. "Are you the lady who walked all that way for the interview?" Maria looked up to see an older man in gray maintenance coveralls, a ring of keys jingling at his hip. His weathered face carried kind eyes and laugh lines around his mouth. "Word travels fast around here," he said with a warm smile. "I'm Pete. I clean the offices upstairs, and I couldn't help overhearing some folks talking about you." Maria's cheeks flushed. "Yes, that's me. I'm Maria Lopez." She straightened her wrinkled blouse, trying to maintain some dignity. Pete sat down beside her, keeping a respectful distance. 20 miles, they said, with a little girl at home waiting for you." He shook his head in admiration. "That's something else, Mrs. Lopez. Something else entirely." "Thank you," Maria replied softly, touched by his genuine warmth. "And it's just Miss Lopez now." Pete nodded understanding. "I noticed you checking your purse there. Need bus fare to get home?" Maria's pride warred briefly with her necessity. I didn't think this far ahead this morning. I was so focused on getting here." Without hesitation, Pete reached into his pocket and pulled out his worn leather wallet. "Here," he said, pressing a few bills into her hand. "The number 47 bus will take you straight back to your neighborhood." "Oh, no, I couldn't," Maria started to protest, but Pete held up his hand. "My mama raised me and my sisters by herself," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Worked 3 jobs sometimes. I know that look in your eyes. It's the same one she had. The one that says you'd walk through fire for your kid." Tears welled in Maria's eyes as she clutched the bus money. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll find a way to pay you back." Pete stood up, adjusting his coveralls. "You pay it forward someday when you can. That's all the payback I need." He tipped his cap and headed back toward the building, leaving Maria overwhelmed by this unexpected kindness. The bus arrived a few minutes later, its brakes squealing as it pulled up to the curb. Maria carefully climbed aboard, her feet protesting each step. She found a seat near the window and watched the city landscape roll by, her mind drifting to Lily. The gentle swaying of the bus and the steady hum of its engine provided a soothing backdrop for her thoughts. She imagined walking through their front door with good news, seeing Lily's face light up with that pure joy only children can express. Her daughter's resilience amazed her, how she never complained about their tight circumstances, how she found delight in simple things like drawing pictures with stubby crayons, or making up stories about the shapes in the clouds. The bus wound its way through the city's outskirts, past discount stores and small businesses, gradually entering their more modest neighborhood. Maria watched familiar landmarks pass by the corner market, where they bought day-old bread at half price, the park where Lily loved to play on the swings, the library where they spent rainy afternoons reading together. When her stop approached, Maria pulled the cord and carefully made her way to the front. "Thank you," she said to the driver, meaning it with all her heart. Every act of kindness today felt like a small miracle. The walk from the bus stop to their apartment was short, but Maria's feet screamed with every step. She could see Mrs. Rodriguez's window, where she knew Lily had spent the day. The elderly neighbor had become like a grandmother to Lily, always willing to help when Maria needed childcare. Before Maria could even knock, the door flew open and Lily launched herself forward. "Mommy!" she cried, wrapping her small arms around Maria's waist. Maria's exhaustion melted away as she hugged her daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. She closed her eyes, savoring the moment, remembering every step of her long journey today, and knowing it was all worth it for this little girl. "I missed you so much, my amor," Maria whispered, stroking Lily's dark hair. "Did you get the job, Mommy?" Lily asked, looking up with those big, hopeful eyes that could melt the hardest heart. Maria knelt down despite her aching feet to be at eye level with her daughter. "I don't know yet, sweetheart, but something special happened today." She pulled Lily close again, her voice soft but steady. "Maybe Mommy's luck is finally changing." Morning sunlight streamed through the small kitchen window as Maria stirred a pot of oatmeal on the stove. The familiar scent of cinnamon and brown sugar filled their modest apartment. She'd added extra raisins today, Lily's favorite, hoping to make the simple breakfast feel special. "Just a few more minutes, Mia," Maria called out, hearing Lily's footsteps padding down the hallway. Her daughter appeared in the doorway, still in her pink pajamas decorated with unicorns, her dark curls wild from sleep. "Can I help set the table, Mommy?" "Of course, sweetie. Remember," the shrill ring of the telephone cut through their morning routine. Maria's heart skipped a beat. Not many people had their number, and calls this early usually meant bad news. She turned down the heat under the oatmeal and reached for the worn cordless phone mounted on the wall. "Hello?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "Mrs. Lopez? This is Daniel Whitmore." Maria's fingers tightened around the phone. She caught herself gripping the counter for support. "Yes, Mr. Whitmore, good morning. I hope I'm not calling too early." His voice carried the same warmth she remembered from yesterday, though now tinged with what sounded like hesitation. No, not at all." Maria watched as Lily carefully placed 2 bowls on their small kitchen table, trying to keep her voice steady. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday," Daniel continued. "Your determination, walking all that way, it reminded me so much of my mother. She never let anything stop her either." Maria held her breath, afraid to hope. "I want to offer you a position," he said. The words hit her like a wave of warmth, her eyes filled with tears, and she pressed a hand to her mouth to hold back a sob of relief. "Mommy?" Lily looked up, concerned. "Are you okay?" Maria nodded quickly, giving her daughter a watery smile. "However," Daniel continued, and something in his tone made her stomach tighten, "there's a complication. The board. Well, they're not entirely convinced. They're insisting on a trial period, and the only immediate opening we have is at our branch office in Riverside." "Riverside?" Maria's voice wavered. She knew the area. It was 2 hours away by public transit. "I see. It would be a 3-month trial period, full benefits from day one. The salary we discussed, with potential for advancement if things work out." He paused. "I know it's not ideal, but it's the best I could do for now. The board members, they need convincing." Maria's mind raced. 2 hours each way meant leaving before dawn to arrive by 9. She'd need to find someone to get Lily to school, to watch her after. The cost of transit alone would eat into her earnings. "Could I?" She swallowed hard. "Could I have a few minutes to think about it?" "Of course," Daniel replied. "But I should mention, we need someone to start next Monday. I'm sorry for the short notice." Next Monday. 5 days to completely reorganize their lives. Maria looked at Lily, who was now pouring milk into their bowls with careful concentration, her tongue sticking out slightly in focus. "Would it be all right if I call you back in an hour?" Maria asked. "Take your time. You have my direct line now." He gave her the number, which she quickly scribbled on the notepad they kept by the phone. After hanging up, Maria stood motionless in the kitchen, her mind whirling with possibilities and problems. "Was that about the job, Mommy?" Lily asked, climbing into her chair. Maria moved to the stove, mechanically stirring the oatmeal. "Yes, baby. It was Mr. Whitmore, the nice man I told you about yesterday. Did you get it? Did you get the job?" The hope in Lily's voice made Maria's chest ache. She spooned oatmeal into their bowls, buying time to find the right words. "They offered me a job," she began carefully, sitting down across from her daughter. "But it's far away, in Riverside." Lily's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "How far is that?" 2 hours by bus." Maria watched her daughter's face process this information. It means I'd have to leave very early in the morning before you wake up. Mrs. Rodriguez next door said she could help get you ready for school and maybe watch you after until I get home. She trailed off, seeing the slight trembling of Lily's lower lip. But you'd come home every night, right? Lily's voice was small. Of course, Mia. Maria reached across the table to squeeze her daughter's hand. Every single night. And on weekends, we'd have all day together, just like always. Lily nodded slowly, stirring her oatmeal. Would we have more money? For new shoes and stuff? The question hit Maria like a physical blow. She thought of Lily's own worn sneakers, the way her daughter had watched her bandage her bleeding feet last night, trying to hide her tears. Yes, baby. We'd have money for new shoes and proper groceries. Maybe even start saving for some art supplies for you. Lily's eyes lit up at that, though she tried to hide her excitement. The nice paints? Like in the art store window? Maybe. We'd have to be careful with money at first, but… Maria took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders. This is our chance, Lily. A real chance. The words came out strong and sure, even as uncertainty fluttered in her chest like a trapped bird. She watched her daughter nod solemnly, accepting this new reality with the resilience of childhood. Can I draw Mr. Whitmore a thank you picture? Lily asked, already brightening at the prospect. Maria felt tears threatening again. That's a wonderful idea, sweetheart. But first, eat your breakfast before it gets cold. They ate in companionable silence, the morning sun warming their small kitchen. Maria's mind raced with all the arrangements she'd need to make bus schedules to memorize, neighbors to speak with, a new routine to plan. But watching Lily carefully eat her breakfast, already thinking about her thank you drawing, Maria felt a fierce determination rise above her fears. She would make this work. She had to. The memory of Daniel Whitmore's kind eyes and her own bleeding feet reminded her how far she'd already come. 2 hours on a bus was nothing compared to walking 20 miles. Nothing compared to giving her daughter a better life. Still, as she watched Lily finish her breakfast, her heart trembled with the weight of all the unknowns ahead of them. The alarm chirped at 4:30 a.m., pulling Maria from her brief sleep. Her feet still ached from yesterday's walking, but she forced herself to sit up in the darkness. Through the thin walls, she could hear Mrs. Rodriguez next door getting ready for her early shift at the hospital. Maria tiptoed to Lily's room, her heart breaking at having to wake her daughter so early. Lily lay curled around her stuffed elephant, dark curls splayed across her pillow. "Mi amor," Maria whispered, gently stroking her daughter's cheek. "Time to wake up, sweetie." Lily's eyes fluttered open. "Is it morning already, Mommy?" "Yes, baby. Remember we talked about this. You're going to stay with Mrs. Rodriguez while Mommy goes to her new job." Maria helped Lily sit up, fighting back tears at her daughter's sleepy confusion. They went through their morning routine in the dim light. Maria helped Lily brush her teeth and change into her clothes, while a pot of water heated for instant coffee. She packed Lily's favorite cereal and a juice box in her little backpack, along with her coloring books and crayons. "Will you be home for dinner?" Lily asked, clutching her elephant as Maria locked their apartment door. "I'll try my best, my amor." Maria squeezed Lily's hand as they walked next door. Mrs. Rodriguez answered after one knock, already dressed in her nurse's scrubs. Come in," the older woman said warmly. "Lily can sleep on my couch until it's time for school. Don't worry about a thing, Maria." Maria knelt to hug Lily tight. "Be good for Mrs. Rodriguez. I love you so much." "Love you too, Mommy," Lily mumbled, already drowsy again, as Mrs. Rodriguez guided her to the couch. The pre-dawn air was cool as Maria hurried to catch the first bus of her 2-hour commute. Her worn shoes rubbed against yesterday's blisters, but she couldn't afford new ones yet. The bus was nearly empty this early, filled mostly with cleaning staff and construction workers heading to their jobs. Maria closed her eyes during the long ride, practicing the computer terms she'd studied last night. She needed to prove herself worthy of this chance Mr. Whitmore had given her. The branch office was smaller than the downtown headquarters, housed in a plain brick building. Maria smoothed her second-hand blazer and touched the small cross at her neck before walking inside. The receptionist barely glanced up. "New hire?" "Down the hall. Last door on the right." Maria found the office space filled with identical gray cubicles. A few early arrivals stared as she walked past, whispering behind their hands. She located her assigned desk and began arranging her few belongings, a small photo of Lily, a notepad, and some pens she'd bought at the dollar store. "Well, well, you must be the charity case Daniel picked up." Maria turned to find a sleek woman in an expensive suit leaning against her cubicle wall. Everything about her screamed polish and privilege, from her perfectly styled hair to her designer heels. "I'm Maria Lopez," she said quietly, extending her hand. "It's nice to meet you." The woman ignored her offered handshake. "Claire Thompson, Senior Account Manager. Let me give you some friendly advice. This isn't some neighborhood help center. We handle million-dollar accounts here. Maybe you should look for something more suitable to your experience level." Heat crept up Maria's neck, but she kept her voice steady. "I appreciate your concern, but Mr. Whitmore believes I can contribute here. I plan to work hard and learn quickly." Claire's perfectly painted lips curved in a cruel smile. "How sweet. Did you practice that little speech on your bus ride from whatever ghetto you crawled out of?" Before Maria could respond, their manager called everyone for the morning meeting. She sat quietly as project assignments were distributed, taking careful notes. When Claire deliberately knocked Maria's water bottle off her desk while walking past, Maria simply picked it up without comment. The day passed in a blur of new procedures to learn and subtle snubs from her coworkers. During lunch, no one invited her to join them in the break room. She ate her peanut butter sandwich alone at her desk, studying training materials between bites. The afternoon brought a small victory when Maria caught an error in some filing that would have delayed an important contract. Instead of taking credit, she quietly pointed it out to Claire, who had made the mistake. The other woman's face flushed with anger. "Just remember your place," Claire hissed later, deliberately bumping Maria's chair. "No one wants you here." By the time Maria started her long journey home, her feet were bleeding again and her head ached from tension. She missed the express bus and had to take a longer route. Night had fallen by the time she finally climbed the stairs to their apartment. Mrs. Rodriguez met her in the hallway. "Lily's inside doing her homework. She was such a good girl today, Maria. How was your first day?" "Challenging," Maria admitted, "but I'll manage. Thank you so much for helping with Lily." When she opened their apartment door, Lily came running. "Mommy, I made something for you." Maria dropped her purse and scooped her daughter into a tight hug, breathing in her sweet, familiar scent. All the day's hurt seemed to fade as Lily's small arms wrapped around her neck. "Look what I drew in art class." Lily pulled back to show Maria a crayon drawing. It showed two stick figures holding hands, one tall, one small, surrounded by hearts. Across the top, in careful letters, were the words, "Mommy, you're my hero." Maria's eyes filled with tears as she held the picture. "It's beautiful, mi amor. The most beautiful thing I've ever seen." A week had passed, and Maria's muscles protested as she dragged herself from her bed at 4:30 a.m. The familiar ache in her feet reminded her of how far she'd come, but also how far she still had to go. Through her window, the stars still sparkled in the dark sky, their faint light offering little comfort in the pre-dawn chill. In the kitchen, Maria moved quietly, not wanting to wake Lily just yet. She packed 2 lunches, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with apple slices for Lily and simple crackers with cheese for herself. The bread was getting stale, but payday wasn't until next week. She'd learned to stretch every dollar, every morsel of food. "Mama?" Lily's sleepy voice came from the doorway. Her daughter stood there in her favorite unicorn pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Mi amor, it's still early. You should be sleeping," Maria said softly, opening her arms. Lily shuffled over for a morning hug. "I wanted to help you get ready," Lily mumbled into Maria's shirt. Maria's heart squeezed. Her daughter was too young to shoulder such concerns, yet here she was, trying to make things easier. "Thank you, mi cielo. But you need your rest. Mrs. Rodriguez won't come for another hour." After getting Lily back to bed, Maria ironed her one office-appropriate blouse. The white cotton was becoming thin from too many washes, but she made sure every crease was perfect. She couldn't control what others thought of her background, but she could control how she presented herself. The morning routine had become a carefully choreographed dance. Wake Lily at 6:00 a.m., help her dress, make sure she ate breakfast, double-check her backpack, and walk her next door to Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment. Then begin the long journey to work. The first bus was always crowded with other early morning workers. Maria held her worn purse close, watching the city wake up through foggy windows. She'd learned to use the hour-long ride to review work documents, making the most of every minute. When she arrived at the office at 8:00 a.m. sharp, Claire was already at her desk, perfectly coiffed as always. She looked up as Maria walked past, her lips curling into a slight smirk. "Oh, Maria," Claire called out, her voice sticky, sweet. "Mr. Harrison was looking for those quarterly reports. You know, the ones you were supposed to finish yesterday?" Maria's stomach tightened. She had stayed late finishing those reports, double-checking every number. "I left them on his desk last night, Claire. Before I left." "Really?" Claire's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "That's odd. They weren't there this morning when I checked." Maria kept her voice steady, though her heart raced. "I'm sure they'll turn up. I always make copies of important documents." She watched Claire's smile falter slightly. It was a small victory, but Maria would take it. Throughout the day, Maria focused on her work, refusing to let Claire's subtle jabs distract her. When someone made a joke about her humble beginnings, she smiled and kept typing. When Claire loudly discussed her weekend plans at an expensive resort, Maria thought of Lily's drawings posted on their refrigerator, worth more than any luxury vacation. During her lunch break, Maria sat alone in the break room, eating her crackers and cheese while reviewing client files. A new employee, Sarah, hesitated by her table. "Mind if I join you?" Sarah asked. Maria gestured to the empty chair, grateful for the friendly face. They chatted about work, and Maria found herself sharing stories about Lily. It felt good to talk normally with someone, without judgment or pretense. The afternoon dragged on with endless meetings and paperwork. Maria's eyes burned from staring at spreadsheets, but she refused to make mistakes. Each number had to be perfect, each report flawless. She couldn't give Claire or anyone else ammunition against her. At 6:00 p.m., most employees packed up to leave. Maria stayed, knowing she needed to catch up on work she'd missed while attending mandatory training sessions. Claire walked past her desk, designer handbag swinging. "Don't work too hard," Claire said with false concern. "Though I suppose you have to, given your situation." Maria waited until Claire was gone before allowing herself a deep breath. She touched the small cross hanging from her neck, a gift from her late husband. "Give me strength," she whispered. The office grew quiet as darkness fell outside. Maria's phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Rodriguez. "Lily finished her homework and had dinner. She's waiting up for you." Guilt and love warred in Maria's chest. She quickly finished the last report and gathered her things. The night cleaning crew had already started their rounds when she finally left the building. The evening commute was longer with fewer buses running. Maria used the time to call Lily. "Mama, I got an A on my spelling test." Lily's excited voice filled her with warmth. "That's wonderful, mi amor. I'm so proud of you. When will you be home?" "Soon, baby. Very soon." It was past 9:00 p.m. when Maria finally opened their apartment door. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, her latest drawing clutched in her hand. Maria carefully picked up the paper. It showed two figures holding hands, surrounded by hearts and stars. "Me and Mommy," was written in wobbly letters across the top. After tucking Lily into bed and paying Mrs. Rodriguez for another long day of childcare, Maria finally allowed herself to feel the weight of exhaustion. Her feet throbbed, her back ached, and tomorrow would bring the same challenges. In her small bedroom, Maria changed into her nightgown and sank onto her bed. The springs creaked under her weight, a familiar sound in the quiet apartment. She clasped her hands together, closing her tired eyes. "Lord," she whispered, "give me the strength to face another day. Watch over my Lily. Help me be the mother she deserves." Her voice cracked with emotion. "And thank you for this opportunity." even when it feels impossible. Maria stepped into the bustling office, her worn shoes squeaking against the polished floor. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across her desk. She had just settled in, pulling out her carefully packed lunch, when Claire approached with a towering stack of papers. "The Anderson account," Claire announced, dropping the mess onto Maria's desk with a thud. "It needs to be completely reorganized by end of day. Everything's mixed up. Contracts, invoices, correspondence, everything." A slight smirk played at the corner of Claire's mouth. "Good luck." Maria stared at the mountain of papers, her heart sinking. There must have been thousands of documents, all jumbled together like a giant puzzle missing its picture. She took a deep breath, remembering Lily's words from that morning. "You can do anything, Mama." She started by creating neat piles on her desk. Contracts in one stack, financial documents in another, correspondence in a third. Her fingers moved quickly, sorting through years of paperwork. When she found related documents, she used paper clips to keep them together. Each time she discovered a pattern or connection, a small spark of satisfaction warmed her chest. Hours ticked by. Maria barely touched her crackers and cheese, too focused on her task. Other employees walked past her desk, some whispering and pointing at the growing organization system she'd created. But Maria didn't notice. She was lost in her work, her mind completely absorbed in finding order within chaos. By early afternoon, she had transformed the jumble into clearly labeled folders. She'd even created a simple tracking system using colored sticky notes to mark urgent items and upcoming deadlines. Her back ached from hunching over the desk, but pride flickered in her chest as she surveyed her work. The elevator dinged, and Daniel Whitmore stepped onto the floor. Maria's stomach tightened. She hadn't expected him today. He moved through the office, greeting employees, until he reached her desk. "Mrs. Lopez," he said warmly, then paused, noticing the meticulously organized files. "What's all this?" Before Maria could answer, Claire hurried over. "The Anderson account, sir. I asked Mrs. Lopez to sort it this morning." Daniel picked up one of the folders, examining Maria's system. His eyebrows rose as he flipped through the pages. "This island, remarkable," he said softly. "You did all this today?" Maria nodded, her cheeks warming. "Yes, sir. I created a color-coding system to track important dates and deadlines. Green for completed items, yellow for pending, and red for urgent matters." She pointed to a summary sheet she'd created. "And here's an overview of all major contracts and their status." Daniel studied the summary, clearly impressed. "This is exactly what we needed. The Anderson account has been a mess for years." He turned to Claire. "Make sure everyone uses Mrs. Lopez's system going forward." Claire's face reddened, but she nodded stiffly. Throughout the afternoon, something shifted in the office. Several coworkers stopped by Maria's desk, asking questions about her organization system. Even Claire managed a grudging, "nice work," as she passed by. At 5 o'clock, Maria gathered her things, her shoulders aching but her spirit lighter than it had been in days. She pulled out her bus ticket, purchased with her first paycheck, and held it carefully. No more walking 20 miles, no more bloody feet. It was a small victory, but it felt enormous. As she waited for the elevator, she heard footsteps behind her. It was Sandra from accounting, who had never spoken to her before. "Hey," Sandra said, smiling tentatively. "That was pretty amazing, what you did with the Anderson files. Would you maybe want to grab coffee tomorrow morning, before work? I'd love to learn more about your organization methods." Maria clutched her bus ticket tighter, warmth spreading through her chest. "I'd like that," she said softly. The elevator doors opened, and Maria stepped inside, holding her precious bus ticket. For the first time since starting this job, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to belong. The evening shadows stretched long across the apartment walls as Maria unlocked her front door. Her feet ached from another grueling day, but a smile tugged at her lips, thinking of how she'd managed to impress even Claire with her work on the Anderson file. The smile faded when she heard a rough, persistent cough coming from Lily's room. "Mrs. Rodriguez, their elderly neighbor called from the kitchen. Lily wasn't feeling well this afternoon. She barely touched her dinner. Maria's heart clenched as she rushed to her daughter's bedroom. Lily lay curled up under her thin blanket, her dark curls plastered to her forehead with sweat. When Maria placed her hand on Lily's forehead, the heat radiating from her skin sent a jolt of fear through her chest. "Baby, how long have you been feeling sick?" Maria asked, brushing back Lily's damp hair. Lily's eyes fluttered open, glassy with fever. "Since after lunch," she mumbled, her voice raspy. "My throat hurts, Mommy." Maria turned to Mrs. Rodriguez, who stood anxiously in the doorway. "Did she eat anything today?" "She had some soup at lunch, but then the cough started. I tried giving her honey tea, but—" The older woman wrung her hands. "I should have called you at work." No, you did everything right," Maria assured her, though her stomach churned with worry. She walked Mrs. Rodriguez to the door, thanking her profusely for watching Lily. Back in Lily's room, Maria changed her daughter into fresh pajamas and got the children's fever medicine from their meager first aid supplies. "Here, mi amor, take this. It will help you feel better." Lily swallowed the medicine with a grimace. "Will you stay with me, Mommy?" "Of course, baby." Maria kicked off her shoes and climbed onto the small bed, gathering Lily into her arms. Her daughter's small body burned against her chest. Throughout the night, Maria dozed fitfully between Lily's coughing spells. She kept checking her temperature, applying cool washcloths to her forehead, and whispering prayers into the darkness. Around 3 a.m, Lily's fever finally broke, but her cough remained harsh and persistent. As the first gray light of dawn crept through the window, Maria faced an impossible choice. Her trial period at work was crucial. Missing even one day could give Claire and the others the excuse they needed to push her out. But Lily was sick, and the thought of leaving her tore at Maria's heart. She called Mrs. Rodriguez, her voice thick with exhaustion. "Would you be able to watch her again today? I know it's asking a lot." "Of course, dear," Mrs. Rodriguez answered without hesitation. "Bring her over. I'll make her my special chicken soup." Maria helped a groggy Lily dress, packed her favorite stuffed animal, and carried her next door. "Mommy has to go to work, mi amor," she explained, kissing Lily's warm forehead. "Mrs. Rodriguez will take good care of you." "Don't want you to go," Lily whimpered, clinging to Maria's neck. Maria's eyes burned with unshed tears. "I know, baby. I don't want to go either. But I have to. For us. I'll be home as soon as I can." The bus ride to work was torture. Maria's body ached for sleep, but her mind wouldn't rest. She kept seeing Lily's flushed face, hearing her cough. When she finally reached her desk, the stack of papers waiting for her seemed impossibly tall. She sat down heavily, her shoulders slumped. The office bustled around her, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, co-workers chatting about their evening plans. But Maria barely heard them. Her thoughts were 2 hours away, with her sick little girl. "Please, God," she whispered, closing her eyes briefly. "Keep her safe. Help her get better." She touched the small cross she wore around her neck, the one her late husband had given her. "Give me strength to get through this day." Claire walked past, dropping another file on Maria's desk without a word. Maria stared at it, then straightened her shoulders. She had to focus, had to prove herself worthy of this chance. But every few minutes, her eyes drifted to the phone, willing it not to ring with bad news about Lily. She pulled out her wallet, opening it to the small school photo of Lily from last year. Her daughter's bright smile beamed up at her, and Maria touched the picture gently. "For you, my amor," she whispered. "Everything for you." Then she picked up her pen and forced herself to concentrate on work, all while her heart whispered endless prayers for her precious daughter's recovery. Maria sat at her desk, her thoughts drifting to Lily's feverish face, when Daniel's tall figure appeared at her cubicle. He held a thick folder in his hands, his expression serious but kind. "Maria, do you have a moment?" he asked, gesturing toward the conference room. She nodded, smoothing her simple black skirt as she stood. Inside the conference room, Daniel spread several documents across the table. "Our Hope Haven project is failing," he said, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. "It's meant to help low-income families access our services, but we're not connecting with the community. I'd like you to take a look." Maria studied the papers, her heart beating faster. The project aimed to provide financial counseling and support to struggling families just like hers. The numbers were dismal: low attendance, high dropout rates, minimal impact. "May I speak freely?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. Daniel nodded, leaning forward. "These workshops," she said, pointing to the schedule, "they're during working hours. Most struggling parents can't take time off. And the language here," she picked up a brochure. "It's formal, intimidating. When you're worried about feeding your children, terms like fiscal responsibility and asset management sound like they're meant for someone else." Daniel's eyes widened slightly. "What would you suggest?" Maria took a deep breath. "Evening sessions, simple words, and maybe we could provide childcare. When I first became a widow, I couldn't afford a sitter. It's why I miss so many opportunities." Something flickered in Daniel's eyes. "Take the lead on this, Maria. Show us how to do it right." Over the next few days, Maria threw herself into reimagining the project. She rewrote the materials in clear, encouraging language. She arranged for the company cafeteria to provide simple meals during evening workshops. Most importantly, she spoke to every struggling family who came through the doors. "I know what it's like," she told a young mother who was fighting back tears. "To count every penny, to lie awake wondering how to make it stretch. You're not alone anymore." Word spread. More families began attending. Maria stayed late, listening to their stories, sharing her own experiences. She showed them how to build budgets that actually worked for minimum wage earnings, how to negotiate with utility companies, where to find community resources. Claire, who had been the project's original leader, watched from the sidelines. At first, her looks were skeptical, even hostile. But as success stories began to multiply, something changed. "I never understood," Claire admitted one evening, helping Maria set up chairs. "These people, I thought they just weren't trying hard enough." Maria smiled gently. "Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who look the most broken." The project's numbers transformed. Families weren't just attending, they were completing the program, implementing changes, finding hope. Maria created a mentor system, connecting successful participants with newcomers. The conference room hummed with conversation and laughter during sessions, children playing quietly in the corner while their parents learned and shared. One evening, as Maria gathered her things after a particularly successful workshop, Daniel appeared in the doorway. He'd been watching the session from the back, she realized, though she'd been too busy to notice. "Walk with me," he asked. They strolled through the quiet office. The setting sun painted the walls golden through the large windows. "You've done something remarkable here," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. "When I see you with these families, you remind me so much of my mother." Maria looked up, surprised. "She raised me alone," he continued, stopping by the window. "Worked 3 jobs, but somehow she always found time to help others in our neighborhood. She'd share our food, watch their children, teach them to read English." He turned to Maria, his eyes glistening. "She believed that true dignity comes from lifting others while you climb." Maria's throat tightened. She thought of all the times she'd felt out of place here, like an imposter in this gleaming building. But now, watching the sunset paint the city in shades of hope, she felt something new. Belonging. "Thank you," she whispered, "for giving me this chance." Daniel smiled warmly. "No, Maria. Thank you for showing us what real leadership looks like." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights begin to twinkle on. For the first time since starting this job, Maria felt truly seen, not as a charity case or a trial employee, but as someone who brought real value, someone who belonged. The moment was interrupted by her phone buzzing, a text from her neighbor about Lily's fever. Reality rushed back, but now it felt less overwhelming. She had found her place here, even as she carried her responsibilities as a mother. In helping others find their dignity, she had discovered her own. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the windows of the branch office's main conference room. Colorful streamers hung from the ceiling, and a modest spread of cookies and punch decorated the corner table. Employees gathered in small clusters, their usual business attire slightly relaxed for the casual celebration. Maria stood near the back, her hands clasped together, still amazed by how much had changed in just a few weeks. The Hope Haven project, once struggling, had transformed into something beautiful. Her heart swelled remembering the grateful faces of the families they'd helped, single mothers just like her who finally had a chance to breathe. Daniel stood at the front of the room, tapping his water glass with a spoon to get everyone's attention. The quiet chatter died down as all eyes turned to him. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice warm and sincere. "When we started the Hope Haven initiative, we had grand plans but struggled to connect with the community we wanted to serve. That changed when someone special joined our team." Maria felt her cheeks warm as Daniel's gaze found her in the crowd. "Maria Lopez came to us under extraordinary circumstances," he continued. "Many of you know her story, how she walked 20 miles just for an interview." He paused, emotion flickering across his face. "But what you might not know is how she transformed this project from the inside out." Claire, who had once been so cold to Maria, now stood nearby with a thoughtful expression. Other colleagues, who had initially dismissed her, were listening intently. "Maria brought something we were missing, authentic understanding," Daniel said. "She showed us that serving our community isn't just about policies and procedures. It's about seeing people, really seeing them, and meeting them where they are." The room felt warmer somehow, filled with a shared sense of purpose that hadn't existed before. Maria's eyes grew misty as she thought of her own journey, how far she'd come from that desperate morning walk in bleeding feet. "Thanks to Maria's insights, we've helped 37 families access our services this month alone. That's triple our previous numbers." Daniel's voice carried pride and genuine appreciation. "But more importantly, these families now trust us. They know we're here to support them, not judge them." Just then, Maria's phone buzzed in her pocket. She discreetly checked a text from her neighbor about Lily. Her heart leaped as she read the message. "Fever broke. She's asking for you and feeling much better." Tears of relief and joy spilled down her cheeks. A few colleagues noticed and offered concerned looks, but she smiled, shaking her head to show they were happy tears. Daniel was still speaking. "Maria reminds me so much of my own mother," he shared, his voice softening. She too knew what it meant to fight for dignity, to work against impossible odds for her family. When I see Maria's dedication, her grace under pressure, I see that same spirit. The room broke into spontaneous applause. Maria felt something shift in the atmosphere. Gone were the whispers about charity cases and pity hires. In their place was genuine respect. After Daniel's speech, colleagues approached Maria one by one. Claire was among the first, her usual sharp expression replaced by something softer. "I misjudged you," Claire admitted quietly. "The way you handled the Martinez family's case last week, I've never seen anyone connect with clients like that." Others shared similar sentiments. "You made us see things differently," said Tom from accounting. "We needed that perspective." As the celebration continued, Maria found a quiet moment to share her news with Daniel. "Lily's fever broke," she told him, her voice thick with emotion. "Everything feels like it's finally falling into place." Daniel's eyes crinkled with genuine joy. "You've earned this, Maria. Every bit of it. Your daughter must be so proud of you." "I'm just grateful," she replied, thinking of all the prayers that had led her here. "Grateful for the chance to prove myself, to help others who are struggling like I was." The celebration wound down as evening approached. Maria gathered her things, her heart full to bursting. The drive home felt lighter somehow despite the usual traffic. When she arrived, her neighbor met her with a smile. "Lily's been drawing pictures all afternoon," the neighbor said. "She couldn't wait to show you." Inside, Lily sat up in bed, her cheeks pink with healthy color instead of fever. Drawings were scattered across her blanket, bright crayon illustrations of what looked like Maria in a business suit, helping other people. "Mommy!" Lily called out, arms wide for a hug. "Did you help more families today?" Maria gathered her daughter close, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair. "Yes, baby. And guess what? A lot of people helped Mommy too." Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Maria sat on the edge of her own bed. The moonlight filtered through her window, casting a gentle glow across the room. Her feet, once bloody and blistered from that long walk, were now healed, just like her spirit. She closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the day's blessings. Lily's recovery, the celebration at work, the respect she'd earned, the lives she was helping to change. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she folded her hands in prayer. "Thank you, Lord," she whispered, her voice trembling with gratitude. The morning started like any other, with Maria stepping into the office building's lobby just as the sun peeked over the horizon. Her practical black shoes, though not fancy, were whole and comfortable, a far cry from those bloodied ones she'd worn on her first day. She carried a small brown paper bag with her lunch and wore the same determined smile that had become her trademark. "Good morning, everyone," Maria called out cheerfully as she entered the office space. A few co-workers returned her greeting with genuine warmth, a change that still touched her heart each time. The success of the Hope Haven project had slowly transformed how people saw her. But not everyone shared in the goodwill. Claire Thompson stood by the copy machine, her designer blazer perfectly pressed, her manicured nails tapping against a stack of papers. Her eyes followed Maria with the cold calculation of a predator tracking its prey. Maria settled at her desk, powering up her computer and arranging her files for the day ahead. She pulled out a child's drawing from her bag, Lily's latest masterpiece, showing their little family surrounded by hearts. The simple artwork gave her strength, as it did every morning. "Thompson, in my office, please," called Mr. Jenkins, the branch manager. Claire strode past Maria's desk, the click of her heels sharp against the floor. As she passed, she dropped a stack of papers onto Maria's desk without a word. "Could you file these with the quarterly reports?" Claire's tone dripped with false sweetness. "Since you're so good with organizing things." Maria nodded, trying to maintain her professional demeanor. "Of course, I'll take care of it right away." Throughout the morning, Claire made several trips to the filing room, her movements precise and purposeful. During lunch, while Maria ate at her desk while reviewing client files, Claire remained behind, claiming she needed to catch up on work. The afternoon brought a strange tension to the office. Whispers and pointed looks followed Maria as she moved between meetings. She caught fragments of conversations that died as soon as she approached. At 3 o'clock, Mr. Jenkins's voice cut through the office noise. "Miss Lopez, my office, immediately." Maria's heart skipped a beat at his tone, but she rose calmly, smoothing her skirt. As she walked to his office, she noticed Claire watching intently, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Inside the office, Mr. Jenkins wasn't alone. 2 members of the board of directors sat in leather chairs, their expressions grave. On the desk lay several spreadsheets and financial reports. "Please, sit down," Mr. Jenkins said, his voice hard. Maria lowered herself into the remaining chair, her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. "Is something wrong? Would you care to explain these discrepancies?" One of the board members pushed a stack of papers toward her. "We've found several unauthorized transfers from the Hope Haven Project Fund to a private account." Maria's blood ran cold. I don't understand." "The evidence is quite clear, Miss Lopez." Mr. Jenkins tapped his computer screen. "Your login credentials were used to access these accounts. The transfers occurred during your shifts, and your digital signature appears on all the documentation." "That's impossible." Maria leaned forward, her voice rising with desperation. "I would never—" "We've also found these in your desk drawer." The second board member produced a manila envelope. From it, he pulled several printed bank statements and a USB drive. "Hidden beneath your personal items." Maria's hands shook as she examined the papers. The statements showed deposits matching the missing amounts, but she had never seen them before. "These aren't mine. Someone must have planted them. Miss Lopez, Mr." Jenkins' voice carried a note of finality. "We had such high hopes for you. Mr. Whitmore himself vouched for your character. But the evidence is irrefutable." "Please," Maria pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. "I have a daughter to support. I would never risk everything by stealing. You have to believe me." "Security has been called," the first board member stated flatly. "You'll be escorted from the building. The police will be notified, of course." Maria's world spun. Through the office windows, she could see her coworkers pretending not to watch. Claire stood among them, her face a mask of mock concern that couldn't quite hide her satisfaction. 2 security guards appeared at the door. "Miss Lopez, please collect your personal belongings and come with us." Maria moved, as if in a nightmare, her legs wooden as she walked to her desk. With trembling hands, she gathered Lily's drawings and her few personal items into her bag. Tears blurred her vision as she picked up the family photo from her desk, the last picture taken before her husband's death. The walk through the office felt endless. Faces turned away as she passed. People she'd worked alongside, shared lunches with, now avoided her gaze. Only Claire met her eyes, a subtle smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. The security guards flanked her as they moved through the building. The same lobby where Daniel had once knelt to help her now felt like a walk of shame. The receptionist, who had gradually warmed to her cheerful greetings, now stared stonily ahead. Outside, the afternoon sun felt too bright, too harsh. Maria stumbled to the bus stop, clutching her bag to her chest like a shield. The 20-minute ride home stretched into an eternity as she fought to hold back her sobs. When she finally reached her small apartment, she found Lily waiting with their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. The sight of her daughter's innocent smile broke the last of her composure. "Mommy!" Lily ran to her, then stopped short at the sight of her mother's tears. "What's wrong?" Maria pulled her daughter close, no longer able to contain her grief. She sank to her knees, holding Lily as if she were the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly turned to quicksand. "Mommy?" Lily's small hands patted Maria's wet cheeks. "Don't cry, Mommy. Please don't cry." But the tears wouldn't stop. Everything she'd worked for, every step forward she'd taken, had been swept away in an instant. The weight of false accusations and public humiliation crushed down on her shoulders, threatening to break her spirit entirely. Mrs. Rodriguez quietly gathered her things, understanding that mother and daughter needed privacy in this moment of crisis. As she left, she touched Maria's shoulder gently, murmuring a soft prayer in Spanish. Maria held her daughter tighter, her tears soaking into Lily's school uniform. All her prayers for strength, all her determination to provide a better life, seemed to mock her now. In this moment, she felt nothing but the crushing weight of defeat and the bitter taste of injustice. The kitchen clock ticked steadily in the quiet morning air, its rhythm matching the dull throbbing in Maria's chest. She sat at the worn wooden table, her untouched coffee growing cold. Bills were scattered across the surface like fallen autumn leaves. Electric, water, rent, and now a final paycheck that wouldn't cover even half of them. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains, casting shadows across Maria's face. Her eyes were puffy from a night of crying, and her shoulders slumped with the weight of yesterday's humiliation. The memory of being escorted out of the building, of seeing the judgment in her coworkers' eyes, felt like a physical wound. A small stack of unpaid notices caught her attention, their red final warning stamps seeming to mock her. Maria picked one up with trembling fingers, then let it fall back to the table. The paper made a soft sound as it settled among the others, like a whispered reminder of her failure. "What am I going to do?" she whispered to the empty kitchen. Her voice cracked, and she pressed her hands against her face, trying to hold back fresh tears. The gentle padding of small feet made her quickly wipe her eyes. Lily appeared in the doorway, still in her pink pajamas, with little white clouds. Her dark hair was tousled from sleep, but her eyes were bright and concerned as they fixed on her mother. "Mommy?" Lily's voice was soft, tentative. She crossed the kitchen and wrapped her small arms around Maria's shoulders. "Are you still sad?" Maria tried to smile, but it trembled at the edges. "Just thinking, mija." Lily climbed onto the chair next to her mother, her eyes scanning the bills on the table. Though too young to read them all, she seemed to understand their weight. She reached for Maria's hand and held it tight. "Remember when you told me about David and Goliath?" Lily asked suddenly. "How the little guy won because he didn't give up." Maria's throat tightened. She nodded, unable to speak. "Well, you're like David, Mommy," Lily continued, her face earnest. "And these problems are like Goliath, but you're stronger, even if they look bigger." A tear slipped down Maria's cheek, but this time it wasn't entirely from sadness. She pulled Lily into her lap, breathing in the sweet smell of her daughter's hair. "When did you get so wise, mi amor?" she whispered. "I learned from you," Lily replied simply. She reached up and wiped Maria's tear away with her small finger. "Mommy, don't give up, please?" The words hit Maria like a physical force. She looked around their small kitchen, at the crayon drawings Lily had made that covered the refrigerator, at the wooden cross hanging on the wall that had belonged to her grandmother, at the window box, full of struggling but determined marigolds they had planted together. Something stirred in her chest, something stronger than despair. Maria closed her eyes, still holding Lily close, and did what she had done countless times before when the path ahead seemed impossible. She prayed. "Lord," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "I don't understand why this is happening. I don't know how to fix it. But I know you haven't brought us this far to abandon us now. Please, give me strength. Show me the way forward." As she prayed, Maria felt Lily's small hand slip into hers, and her daughter's head rest against her shoulder. The simple gesture of trust and love made her heart swell. The morning light grew stronger, filling the kitchen with a warm glow. Maria opened her eyes and looked down at her daughter. This precious gift who had kept her going through every hardship since losing her husband. This child who somehow always knew exactly what her mother's heart needed to hear. Memories flooded back, of walking 20 miles in bleeding feet for a chance at a better life, of working through exhaustion and doubt, of proving herself again and again. She had done it all for Lily, and she would do it all again. Maria shifted, sitting up straighter in her chair. She might have lost her job, but she hadn't lost her dignity, she hadn't lost her faith, and most importantly, she hadn't lost what mattered most. This beautiful, wise little girl who believed in her without question. "We'll figure this out," Maria said, more firmly now. "God has never failed us before, and He won't start now." Lily beamed up at her, relief and joy lighting up her face. "I knew you wouldn't give up, Mommy." Maria gathered her daughter closer, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. The morning sun caught Lily's dark hair, creating a soft halo effect that made Maria's heart catch. "For you," Maria whispered against Lily's forehead, "I will keep going." Daniel sat in his spacious corner office, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across his mahogany desk. Something had been nagging at him since Maria's dismissal. The numbers didn't add up, not in the spreadsheets, and not in his heart. He knew Maria, saw the same fire in her eyes that his mother had carried through years of hardship. He pulled up the financial records on his computer, rubbing his tired eyes. The accusations against Maria seemed solid at first glance. Missing funds, altered reports, suspicious transfers. But Daniel hadn't built his company by accepting things at face value. "These timestamps," he muttered, leaning closer to the screen. The modifications to the files showed unusual patterns. All the changes had been made during lunch hours when Maria was known to eat alone in the break room, trying to save money by bringing food from home. Daniel pressed the intercom. "Sarah, bring me the security footage from the accounting department. Last 2 weeks." While waiting, he dove deeper into the digital trail. Each document had a unique signature, a code that tracked who accessed it. Maria's login appeared on all the suspicious files, but something felt off about the timing. Sarah wheeled in a cart with several hard drives. "Here you are, sir. Is everything all right?" "No," Daniel said firmly. "Something's very wrong here." He spent the next hour reviewing footage, his jaw tightening as the truth emerged. There, clear as day, Claire Thompson logging in at Maria's terminal during lunch breaks. The camera caught her glancing furtively over her shoulder as she typed. "Dear God," Daniel whispered. The weight of his mistake with Maria pressed heavily on his chest. He dug further, finding more evidence. Claire had created a duplicate login, masking her activities behind Maria's credentials. It was clever, but not clever enough. The timestamps revealed the truth: Maria couldn't have been in 2 places at once. Rising from his desk, Daniel paced the room. Anger built inside him, not just at Claire's deception, but at himself. He should have known better, should have looked closer before allowing an innocent woman, a mother fighting for her child, to be humiliated. The phone on his desk rang. It was the head of IT. "Mr. Whitmore, "You need to see this," the tech director said. "We've found systematic tampering with the accounting software. Someone's been building a false trail for weeks, but they got sloppy. The original files are still in the backup server." Daniel's hand clenched around the phone. "Send everything to my office. Now." He called in his security team and legal department. Within an hour, his conference room filled with evidence of Claire's elaborate scheme. The lawyers pointed out multiple felonies. The security team documented every breach of company policy. Through his office window, Daniel spotted Claire at her desk, working as if nothing was wrong. His blood boiled at her calm demeanor, knowing the pain she'd caused Maria and Lily. He pressed his intercom again. "Sarah, have security escort Miss Thompson to my office. Immediately." Minutes later, Claire walked in, her usual confident smile faltering at the sight of the evidence spread across Daniel's desk. "Sit down, Miss Thompson," Daniel said, his voice ice cold. Claire smoothed her skirt and perched on the edge of the chair. "Is something wrong, Mr. Whitmore?" Daniel slid the security photos across the desk. "Would you care to explain why you're accessing Maria Lopez's computer during her lunch breaks?" The color drained from Claire's face. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "Or perhaps," Daniel continued, turning his monitor to show her the timestamp evidence, "you'd like to explain how Mrs. Lopez supposedly accessed these files while simultaneously being recorded on camera helping clients in the front office?" I can explain," Claire stammered, her composure cracking. "I'm sure you can." Daniel's voice was quiet but fierce. "Just as I'm sure the police will be very interested in your explanation of corporate fraud and identity theft." Claire's hands began to shake. "Please, Mr. Whitmore, I never meant..." "Never meant what?" Daniel stood towering over her. "Never meant to destroy a widow's chance at supporting her child? Never meant to abuse your position to frame an innocent woman? Never meant to get caught?" Tears welled in Claire's eyes, but Daniel felt no sympathy. He'd seen real tears, Maria's tears, shed not for herself, but for her daughter's future. "Security will escort you out," he said firmly. "The police have already been notified. And Claire?" He waited until she met his eyes. "If Maria Lopez doesn't press charges, you should thank God for her kindness, because I assure you, I won't show the same mercy in my corporate lawsuit." As security led a sobbing Claire away, Daniel sank into his chair, the weight of the past few days heavy on his shoulders. He thought of Maria walking 20 miles in bleeding feet, of her quiet dignity in the face of mockery, of her daughter waiting at home right now, probably trying to comfort her mother through this injustice. He reached for his phone, pressing the intercom one last time. "Sarah, get me Maria Lopez's number. Then call my car around. We need to make this right." The phone rang twice before Sarah's voice returned. "I have Mrs. Lopez's information, sir." Daniel picked up the receiver, his voice firm with purpose. "Bring Maria back, immediately." He had failed his mother's memory by not protecting Maria sooner. He wouldn't fail again. It was time to restore not just Maria's job, but her dignity. Maria knelt beside the laundry basket in her small living room, mechanically folding each piece of clothing. Her hands moved through the familiar motions while her mind wandered to darker places. The stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter seemed to mock her from across the room. The phone's sharp ring cut through her thoughts, making her jump. She reached for it hesitantly, her heart pounding. "Hello? Mrs. Lopez?" A crisp, professional voice spoke. "This is Sandra from Mr. Whitmore's office. He requests your presence at headquarters this afternoon. A car will be sent to pick you up in 1 hour." Maria's throat tightened. I don't understand." "I was dismissed. Mr. Whitmore insists. He says it's urgent and concerns your reputation." Those words sent a chill through Maria's spine. Her reputation, the one thing she had left besides Lily. She glanced at the unfolded laundry, then at the clock. "Please tell Mr. Whitmore I'll be there." After hanging up, Maria's hands shook as she changed into her best outfit, a simple navy dress she kept for special occasions. She called her neighbor about watching Lily, who was outside picking wildflowers in their small patch of yard. "Mommy has to go to the big building again," Maria explained, kneeling to Lily's level. "But I'll be back soon." Lily's eyes sparkled. "Can I come?" I want to give you something after. Maria hesitated, then nodded. Something in her daughter's innocent confidence gave her strength. Okay, mi amor. But you'll need to wait in the lobby with Mrs. Garcia. The company car arrived precisely on time, a sleek black sedan that seemed out of place in their modest neighborhood. The driver opened the door with a respectful nod, and Maria felt the strange sensation of being treated with dignity again. During the drive, she pressed her hands together in her lap, whispering silent prayers. Lily held her hand, occasionally squeezing it when she noticed her mother's anxiety. The gesture nearly brought tears to Maria's eyes. The towering glass building looked even more intimidating than before. Maria's legs felt weak as she walked through the rotating doors, Lily and Mrs. Garcia following behind. The lobby buzzed with afternoon activity, but she noticed people stopping to stare as she passed. Sandra met them at the elevator. Mr. Whitmore has called an all-staff meeting in the main conference room, she explained, her tone gentler than Maria remembered. He asked that you join them. Maria's heart thundered in her chest as they rode up to the executive floor. All-staff meeting? The thought of facing everyone who had witnessed her humiliation made her want to run, but Lily's words echoed in her mind. Mommy, don't give up. The conference room doors opened to reveal a packed space. Dozens of employees stood around the long table, including several she recognized from the branch office. Daniel Whitmore stood at the head of the table, his usual commanding presence softened by something she couldn't quite read. When Maria entered, the room fell silent. She felt every eye turn to her, but she forced herself to stand straight, channeling the dignity she had fought so hard to maintain. Maria, Daniel's voice cracked with emotion. Please, come forward. She moved through the crowd, which parted for her like water. When she reached the front, Daniel did something that shocked everyone. He stepped down from the platform. I owe you the most profound apology, he began, his voice thick with emotion. We have uncovered evidence that you were deliberately framed by another employee. His eyes glistened. But worse than that, we failed to see what was right in front of us, your extraordinary character and strength. Murmurs rippled through the room. Maria's hands trembled at her sides as Daniel continued. You walked 20 miles on bleeding feet just for a chance at this job. You endured prejudice and hardship with grace. You turned a failing project into a success through pure compassion and determination. He paused, swallowing hard. You reminded me of my own mother, who fought her way out of poverty with that same unbreakable spirit. And how did we repay you? With suspicion and shame. Daniel turned to address the room, but kept one hand extended toward Maria. This woman exemplifies everything our company should stand for. Her integrity wasn't just intact during her trial period, it was a beacon for others to follow. I stand here today not just to clear her name, but to apologize for allowing a culture where such injustice could occur. The silence in the room was absolute. Maria felt tears rolling down her cheeks, but for the first time in weeks, they weren't tears of shame. She saw heads bowing in reflection, some eyes glistening with emotion. Maria Lopez. Daniel turned back to her, his voice strong despite his own tears. You are not only reinstated with full back pay and benefits, but I want you to head our new community outreach division. Your perspective, your compassion, and your strength are exactly what we need. The room erupted in applause, not polite, corporate clapping, but genuine, emotional appreciation. Maria felt something warm flood through her chest. Dignity, restored and amplified. Several employees she had worked with stepped forward to offer personal apologies and congratulations. Through the glass walls, she caught a glimpse of the lobby below. There stood Lily, her face pressed against the window, clutching a handful of colorful wildflowers she had picked that morning. The sight grounded Maria, reminding her of the pure love that had sustained her through every trial. She stood there, surrounded by the applause of her colleagues, her spirit soaring with vindication and hope, while her daughter waited below with flowers gathered from their humble garden, a perfect bridge between the two worlds she had fought so hard to reconcile. Daniel's office felt different this time. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow across the polished mahogany desk. Maria sat rigidly in the plush leather chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The memory of being escorted out in shame still burned fresh in her mind. "Maria." Daniel's voice was gentle as he settled into his chair. His tie was slightly loosened, and there were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. "I can't begin to express how deeply sorry I am for what happened to you." She swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "Mr. Whitmore, please." He held up his hand. "Let me finish." He stood up and walked to the window, his shoulders tense. "When I first saw you in that lobby, with your torn shoes and bleeding feet, you reminded me so much of my mother. She was a single parent too, you know. Worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table." Maria watched as he turned back to face her, his eyes glistening. She never got the chances she deserved, but she never gave up either. He reached for a folder on his desk, opening it carefully. "The way you handled yourself through everything, the long commute, the hostility, caring for your daughter while proving yourself here, it showed me something remarkable. I just wanted to work hard," Maria said softly, "to give Lily a better life." Daniel nodded, a small smile touching his lips. "That's exactly why I want to offer you something more than just your job back." He slid the folder across the desk toward her. "We're creating a new department, the Family Support Initiative." Maria's hands trembled as she opened the folder. Inside were proposals, budgets, and program outlines, all focused on helping working single parents. "Your experience, your compassion, your understanding of what these families need." Daniel leaned forward, his voice earnest. "Maria, I want you to lead this program." She stared at him, stunned. "Me? But I don't have the qualifications." "You have exactly the qualifications we need," he interrupted firmly. "You've lived it. You understand the struggles these families face in a way no business degree could teach." He gestured to the papers in front of her. "This program will provide childcare assistance, transportation support, flexible scheduling options, all the things that would have made your journey easier." Tears spilled down Maria's cheeks as she looked through the documents. The salary listed was more than she'd ever dreamed of making. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Daniel smiled warmly. "Help us make a real difference for other mothers like you." He paused, his expression growing serious. "My mother never got to see her dreams come true. But she taught me that true strength isn't about power or money. It's about perseverance and compassion. You've shown both, in abundance." Maria wiped her eyes with trembling fingers. "All those miles I walked to that first interview, I was just thinking about surviving, about keeping Lily fed and housed." She looked up at Daniel, her voice growing stronger. "But maybe God had a bigger plan. Maybe all of this struggle was preparing me to help others. So, will you accept?" Daniel extended his hand across the desk. Maria stood, her back straight and her chin held high. This time, her tears weren't from shame or fear, they were tears of gratitude and hope. She grasped his hand firmly. "Yes, Mr. Whitmore. Yes, I will." "Daniel," he corrected with a warm smile. "We're going to be working closely together on this." Maria nodded, clutching the folder to her chest. Her heart felt like it might burst with emotion. All those prayers whispered in the dark, all those moments of doubt and pain, they had led her here, to this moment of redemption and purpose. Outside Daniel's office, Lily waited with Mrs. Chen, the kind receptionist who had offered to watch her. The little girl's face lit up when she saw her mother emerge. In her small hands, she clutched a bouquet of wildflowers, their cheerful faces bobbing with her excitement. "Mommy!" Lily ran forward, the flowers waving. "Are you okay? Your eyes are all red." Maria knelt down, gathering her daughter into her arms. The fresh scent of wildflowers mingled with the familiar comfort of Lily's baby shampoo. "Our lives are changing, baby girl," she whispered, holding her daughter close. "They're changing in the most wonderful way." The morning sun streamed through the lobby windows, wrapping mother and daughter in its golden embrace. Maria closed her eyes, savoring the moment. After so many hard days, after all the tears and struggle, finally, she could feel the warmth of grace shining down on them both. The autumn breeze rustled through the trees as Maria stepped out of her car, a modest used vehicle she'd finally been able to afford. She smoothed her navy blazer, no longer self-conscious about her appearance as she had been during those first difficult days. The community center before her buzzed with activity, and her heart swelled with purpose. Inside, a group of women waited, their faces reflecting the same mix of hope and worry she'd once worn. Some bounced babies on their knees, while others clutched resumes with trembling hands. Maria's heels clicked softly on the floor as she approached them, her warm smile immediately putting them at ease. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice gentle but confident. "I'm Maria Lopez, and I'm here to help you find your path forward." The women straightened in their chairs, and Maria saw herself in each of their expressions: the determination, the fear, the desperate need to provide for their children. One young mother, barely in her 20s, held a sleeping infant while trying to fill out job applications. Without hesitation, Maria took the papers and helped her balance them on a clipboard. "I know exactly how hard this is," Maria shared, sitting beside the young mother. "3 months ago, I walked 20 miles in broken shoes for a job interview." The women gasped softly, and Maria noticed several pairs of eyes growing wet with tears. "But that walk changed everything. Not just for me, but now for all of you too." Throughout the morning, Maria moved from person to person, reviewing resumes, offering interview tips, and, most importantly, listening to their stories. Her assistant, Sarah, who had once been among those who doubted her, took notes and helped coordinate with local businesses that had partnered with their program. "Mrs. Lopez," Sarah called out, genuine respect in her voice. "The daycare center just confirmed they can offer subsidized spots for 3 more families." Maria beamed, remembering her own struggles with childcare. "That's wonderful news! Make sure Miss Thompson and Miss Rodriguez get priority. Their interviews are next week." She turned to the young mothers she'd mentioned, who burst into tears of relief. During lunch, Maria sat in her office, not the cramped cubicle where she'd started, but a modest space with photos of Lily decorating the walls. Her daughter's artwork hung proudly beside certificates and community awards. A knock at the door revealed Claire, of all people, standing there, awkwardly. "Come in," Maria said kindly, though her heart still twinged at the memory of betrayal. Claire had been reassigned to a different department after the incident, but she'd made genuine efforts to make amends. "I wanted to ask your advice about something," she said softly. "My sister. She's going through a divorce, and with 3 kids." She twisted her hands nervously. "Sit down," Maria offered, gesturing to a chair. "Tell me about her situation." As Claire opened up about her sister's struggles, Maria felt no triumph or vindication, only compassion. She pulled out a folder of resources and began explaining various programs that could help, watching as relief slowly replaced the shame in Claire's eyes. That afternoon, Maria visited a local factory where 5 of her program's participants had recently started working. The supervisor praised their dedication, and Maria's chest swelled with pride. These women weren't statistics or charity cases, they were warriors, just like her. "Your program is changing lives," the supervisor said, shaking her hand. "These ladies work harder than anyone I've ever seen." Back at headquarters, Daniel caught her in the hallway. His eyes crinkled with genuine warmth as he showed her the latest statistics. Employment retention rates had improved by 60% among single mothers in their program. "You've exceeded every expectation," he said proudly. "The board wants to expand the program to other branches." Maria thought of that bloody-footed walk that had started it all, how desperate and alone she'd felt. Now she stood in a bright hallway, respected and valued, helping others find their way out of similar darkness. The drive home felt lighter these days. Their apartment, while still modest, now had new curtains and a small garden of potted plants on the windowsill. The neighbor who had helped watch Lily now came over for dinner regularly, and the sound of laughter often filled their home. Maria found Lily at her desk, diligently working on homework. Her daughter's face lit up as she entered, and Maria noticed a new drawing among the many decorating their refrigerator. It showed 2 figures, holding hands, standing beside a tall building with a bright sun overhead. "Is that us?" Maria asked, pulling Lily into a warm hug. "Uh-huh. That's where you help all the mommies," Lily explained proudly. "Jenny at school said her mom got a job because of you." Maria's heart melted. She helped Lily get ready for bed, their evening routine now relaxed and peaceful instead of rushed and worried. As they snuggled under the covers, Lily's giggles filled the room while Maria told her funny stories about her day. "Remember when we used to share the little bed?" Lily asked, touching the new quilt they'd bought together. "I do, mi amor," Maria said softly, running her fingers through her daughter's hair. "But you know what hasn't changed?" "What?" Lily asked, her eyes twinkling in the soft lamplight. "How much I love you," Maria replied, ticking her sides gently until Lily's laughter rang out again. "And how you gave me strength when things were hard." They lay there together, giggling softly in their cozy room, surrounded by the life they'd built from nothing but faith and determination. The street noise outside seemed distant now, no longer threatening but just part of the city's lullaby. Maria held her daughter close, their hearts beating in sync, finally at peace with where they were and excited about where they were going. Through the window, the city lights twinkled like stars, reminding Maria of all the other mothers out there, fighting their own battles. Tomorrow, she would go back to help more of them find their way. But tonight, in this moment, she simply savored the joy of being exactly where she was meant to be. The morning sun painted the sky in soft shades of pink and gold as Maria stood in their small kitchen, carefully tying Lily's shoelaces. The brand-new Mary Janes gleamed, their patent leather surface catching the light. Lily wiggled her toes, admiring how they sparkled. "They're so pretty, Mommy," Lily beamed, her eyes shining with delight. "And they don't hurt at all." Maria's heart squeezed with joy and gratitude. She remembered the blisters, the blood, the endless miles walked in worn-out shoes. But those memories no longer stung. They had become stepping stones to where they were now. "Ready for school, mi amor?" Maria asked, straightening up and smoothing Lily's uniform skirt. Lily nodded eagerly, grabbing her backpack decorated with colorful pins, little treasures she'd collected over the past few months. Maria picked up her own bag, now a neat leather tote that held important documents for the day's meetings at the outreach center. They stepped out into the crisp morning air, their new apartment building standing proud behind them. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, safe, and, most importantly, within walking distance of Lily's school. No more pre-dawn rushes or desperate scrambles for bus fare. Hand in hand, mother and daughter walked down the sidewalk. Maria's own new shoes, sensible black pumps, clicked steadily against the pavement. Each step felt like a victory, a reminder of how far they'd come. "Look, Mommy," Lily pointed at a robin hopping along the fence. "He's singing good morning to us." Maria smiled, squeezing her daughter's hand. Lily's ability to find joy in simple things had been their lighthouse during the darkest storms. "He sure is, baby. Maybe he's happy to see us walking to school together." They passed familiar landmarks. The corner store where they now bought fresh fruit every weekend, the small park where they sometimes had picnics, the church where they gave thanks every Sunday. Each place held memories of their journey, but now those memories were touched with grace instead of pain. As they approached the school gates, other children and parents streamed around them. Maria no longer felt out of place among them. She stood tall, her blazer neat, her head held high. A few parents waved warmly, faces that had become friendly over time. "Have a wonderful day, my amor," Maria said, kneeling to hug Lily goodbye. "Remember, Mommy loves you more than all the stars in the sky." "Love you too, Mommy." Lily squeezed her tight before skipping toward her friends, her new shoes tapping happily on the pavement. Maria watched until Lily disappeared into the building, then turned to head back. The morning was still young, and her heart felt light. The walk that had once seemed endless now felt like a gift. Time to think, to breathe, to appreciate how God had turned their struggles into strength. Near the bus stop, she noticed a young woman in worn clothes, clutching a toddler and staring anxiously at the bus schedule. The sight was like looking into a mirror of her past. She recognized that look of desperate calculation, trying to stretch impossible minutes and dollars. Maria approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Excuse me," she said gently. "Are you okay?" The woman jumped slightly, then tried to smile. "I'm fine," she said quickly, but her voice trembled. "Just trying to figure out if I can make it to a job interview across town." Maria's heart ached with recognition. "I know exactly how that feels," she said softly. She reached into her bag and pulled out a business card, one that still felt surreal to hand out. "I work with a program that helps mothers like us find work and support. Would you like to hear about it?" The woman's eyes widened, hope flickering across her tired face. As Maria explained about the outreach program, the bus arrived. Without hesitation, Maria pulled out her transit pass. "Here, take my pass for today. Get to your interview. Then come see me tomorrow. We'll help you find your path." I can't," the woman stuttered, but Maria pressed the pass into her hand. "Yes, you can," Maria said firmly. "Sometimes we all need a little help to take that first step. I walked 20 miles in broken shoes for my chance. Now it's my turn to help others walk their journey." Tears welled in the woman's eyes as she clutched the pass. "Thank you," she whispered, hurrying onto the bus with her child. Maria watched them go, remembering her own desperate journey to that first interview. Now she walked these same streets with purpose, with dignity, with comfortable shoes that carried her forward instead of holding her back. The sun climbed higher as she made her way home, warming her face. She passed the high-rise where it all began, where Daniel had first seen her bleeding feet and broken spirit. Now she had an office there, where she helped other women find their strength. The morning light caught on her shoes, making them gleam. They were more than just leather and rubber. They were a symbol of how far she'd come, of prayers answered and faith rewarded. Every step was a reminder that dignity wasn't about where you started, but how you chose to walk your path. Maria's heart swelled with gratitude as she thought of Lily, safe at school in her shiny new shoes. Her daughter would grow up knowing her worth, understanding that no dream was too distant if you were willing to walk toward it with determination and faith. The day stretched ahead, full of possibilities. Maria would spend it helping other mothers find their footing, sharing the hope she'd found. Each step still mattered, but now they were steps of purpose rather than desperation. She and Lily walked forward together, their path no longer marked by survival, but illuminated by triumph and hope. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Maria Lopez, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.